right. This is the Evan Ginzburg Show at villageconnectionradio.com, and we are joined by noted musicologist Kevin Goins. And you always have amazing projects. We have Dennis Coffey from the Funk Brothers, am I correct?
Yes, from the Funk Brothers,
That's
yes.
right. And Tower of Power. And tell us about your involvement with these great projects.
Well, let's start with the Dennis Coffey one first. To kind of truncate it for everybody, Dennis many years ago approached me with a disc of recordings, live recordings he had done at a place called Maury Baker's Showplace Lounge in 1968. They were from, they used a multi-track, a 4-track machine to record the live gigs. And fast forward to 2016, he expressed interest in having them reissued, or having them released, really. So I connected him with a longtime colleague of mine, Zev Feldman, who's the co-president of Resonance Records.
He's a Facebook friend of mine.
Yes,
yeah.
yes. And if you follow the many adventures of Zev, he's like the Indiana Jones of the jazz world, finding these recordings that have never been heard by legends.
Wow.
So I approached Zev. Zev got the CDR reference from Dennis and said, "Yeah, I want in." So from that point, which was around, I want to say late March of 2016 to October 2016, we released the vinyl version of Hot Coffee in the D on Resonance Records, with interviews with Dennis. Also, Betty LaVette chimed in.
How great is Betty LaVette?
Oh, legendary.
I mean, there's a lot of people, we use the word legend, but she's a great live performer now, and she's not a kid anymore. She's tremendous.
And her autobiography is a must-read.
Why is she not a household name? I mean, she's so great.
You know, her story is that of, really the ages. She is a legendary R&B singer. She had quite a few hit records in the 1960s. I think a lot of it was a combination of record labels having, bigger rosters. She was on Atlantic for a brief spell, to record labels that had their heart into it but just didn't have the push. She was signed to another label that was owned by Leland Rogers, who was the brother of Kenny Rogers, the Silver Fox label. And if you read her autobiography, she spells out her adventures and misadventures. Right. But
kind of reminds me of the Spinners at Motown, kind of getting lost in the shuffle, and then Tom Bell at Atlantic. They were huge.
Well, there's a story with that. I know we're getting off from the Dennis, but real quick, they were with Harvey Fuqua for at Tri-Fi, and then when Harvey joined Motown by marriage and by career, they became like the Cinderellas without the glass slipper, without the princess, coming to rescue them. Mm-hmm. They put out great records, and then 1970, Stevie Wonder produced "It's a Shame," which pretty much was their swan song from the label.
Right.
They got to Atlantic by way of a colleague of mine, Jimmy Roach, who co-wrote "My Whole World Ended the Moment You Left Me" for David Ruffin. Jimmy was doing production work. He got them a deal with Atlantic. They put out 3 singles, went nowhere.
It's too bad you don't know more about music.
but with the Spinners, they did 3 singles with Jimmy, went nowhere. They were going to get dropped when Tom Bell came into the picture. He wanted to produce for Atlantic. They gave him a list of folks: Aretha Franklin, Donny Hathaway, Roberta Flack, and he's like, "Wait a minute, these are already hit makers." And he sees this. Someone scribble SPIN at the bottom, and he's like, "Wait a minute, you guys have the Spinners?" And Atlantic said, "Yes, I'll produce them." And Atlantic's like, "No, we're going to drop them." He's like, "No, don't drop them. I'll produce them," and the rest is history. But getting back to the Dennis Coffey, we also interviewed Clarence Avant, who signed Dennis to a production deal, him and Mike Theodore, to a label he had called Maverick, and when Maverick folded, it became Sussex Records, where Dennis, of course, is recorded and released Scorpio.
Yeah.
Many years later. But we interviewed we interviewed Dennis, we interviewed Mike Theodore, we interviewed Melvin Davis, who was the drummer with Dennis at the time, and the the late Lyman Woodward. It was actually the Lyman Woodward Trio featuring Dennis Coffey, and Lyman was the organist. So these recordings are just, there's a couple of Dennis originals. There's also a few remakes. They take on a one of my favorites is a gem by a singer named Ruby Andrews. It was a song that was written by Joshie Armstead, which was the big hit at that time. Casanova, Your Playing Days Are Over, which they just stretch out into this great jam. But Residents released the album, the vinyl, in late 2016. The CD came out in January 2017, so it's 2 years old. But it's something I'm very proud of because it was a labor of love. It was great to interview Dennis and Mike Theodore and Melvin Davis. Zev interviewed Clarence Avant, and our colleague Zach, and as well as Zev interviewed Betty Lovette. So it was just a all hands on deck project.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And tell us about the Tower of Power project.
Tower of Power.
I love TOP.
Yeah, you ought to be having fun. Well, for many years, I've been working with David Nathan, the British ambassador of soul, the longtime editor and writer for Blues and Soul magazine, who launched the soulmusic.com website many years ago, and Soul Music Records, the reissue label. And I'd written liner notes for him for, oh my goodness, I'm thinking now, almost like going on 8 years, I think.
Before we go any further with that, tell us about the art of writing liner notes. I mean, at what point is there a line where it gets almost too obsessive? On the third take on Tuesday, June 3rd, 1958, at what point does it sway from writing to, just obsession?
Well, Evan, the key with writing liner notes is you're relaying a story to the reader about that particular recording or the artist's particular work. You tried not to delve too much into detail because then you're going down a whole other road.
Right.
So when I write liner notes, I already have an outline in mind as regard to what is the story we need to tell. Yeah. With Dennis Coffey, I Coffey and the D. When I interviewed Dennis, I wanted to talk to him about his career, yes, but specifically, how did he get to the point to where he did these gigs at Maury Baker's Showplace Lounge in Detroit, and he brought in the 4-track machines from Tara Sherma Studios? So I had to explain, how did he get to Maury Baker's Lounge, and then what happened, and then what happened since.
Right.
So
human interest is very important. It's
right.
not just the bombardment of facts and dates and stats. Because I find with liner notes, either I'm like, this is fascinating, or oh my God, it's just overwhelming.
Yeah, sometimes it can get that way, but it's the writer's job to really hone in and focus. And your job is to tell the story.
Sure.
To relay the story. Okay, your job is not to review, not to critique. And I've seen liner notes where someone goes into a critique about a recording. I'm like, if I want to critique, I'll read Rolling Stone.
Right.
I'll read Spin Magazine.
Sure.
I'll read Downbeat. Don't give me a review in a liner notes.
In 2019, do these publications still thrive, or is it a lesser power? I remember back in the day, if you got a good review in Downbeat or Rolling Stone, it was a big deal.
It's still a big deal because record companies still use those magazines to help promote the releases of the recordings, particularly a magazine like Downbeat, which has always been the go-to for jazz. And I will give a salute as well to Jazz Times, which in recent years have done the same. But to get back to Tower of Power, again, try to truncate the story here. David Nathan and I had been going back and forth of getting, with ideas for reissues and whatnot. And he's always had his door open for, ideas. And being that it was Tower of Power's 50th anniversary last year in 2018, they formed in 1968, I decided, let's see if we can do a Tower of Power anthology of their works on Columbia and Epic Records. The Columbia works were from the mid to late 70s. The Epic Records works were from the 90s. And he ran it by his partners with Soul Music Records, which is Cherry Red Records and Cherry Red Distribution in the United Kingdom. And they said yes. We got the license from Sony Music. And so my job as the co-producer of the collection was to come up with a track listing. There's 35 tracks on this CD.
Wow, 35.
Yes, 35.
You get your money's worth. Yeah.
35 songs, baby. 35. If I remember right, I think 17 from Columbia, 18 from Epic, or the opposite. But besides the track listings and the timings, because you only have 80 minutes on a CD. But we were able to fit all the songs on there that we wanted, that we requested. And then came the liner note work. And that's where I have to give props to a wonderful PR woman named Fiona Bloom, because she was the PR woman for Tower of Power. So I wrote to her, and Emilio Castillo, or best known as Emilio, the leader of Tower of Power, and the group were in Japan. So I had to coordinate the questions, email them to Fiona. She sent them to Tower of Power's people, who sent them to Emilio, and then finally I get an email directly from Emilio Castillo saying, "I'm in Japan. Are you available Thursday morning at 9?" And I'm going, Thursday? I'm like, yes. You say yes. Yeah. You don't stop and think you say yes. And so, or actually, correction, Thursday night. Excuse me, I got my coordinates mixed up. Thursday night at 9, which is Friday morning, 9 a.m. in Japan.
Right.
So, so I'm thinking, Thursday night? Really? Seriously? And in my head, but my mouth said yes.
Sure.
Because if he tells you this is the time I'm available, you don't say no. So we went through the history of Tower of Power at that time, how they got signed to Columbia, how they got signed to Epic, who was involved, and then we went through each track. And he's like, "Kevin, shoot me the names. If I remember, fine. If not, pass." And I got to give props to not only him but Greg Adams, who was their former flugelhornist and arranger, because he was able to fill in what Emilio couldn't, and Emilio was able to fill in what he couldn't.
Right.
And so I interviewed a whole bunch of folks who were involved in the recordings at the time. Mike Kaplan, who was the A&R director at Epic during the 90s, who signed Tower Power. Steve Cropper.
Wow.
Who produced their second Columbia album, We Came to Play. And he was able to recall how that title came about. So really, it was a collaborative effort of different members, or the two members, Emilio and Greg, and then those who worked on the recordings.
I've seen Tower of Power probably a half dozen times, usually on tour with Average White Band, and you just sit in awe of great musicianship with both of those acts. And with Tower of Power, I always think of great horn sections.
Yes.
Now, who do you consider some of the great horn sections? I immediately think of James Brown's band, Pee Wee Ellis and Maceo and Fred Wesley. I think of Earth, Wind and Fire.
The Phoenix Horns.
Yeah, the Phoenix Horns. P-Funk, of course.
Yes.
Who are some other great horn sections?
Oh, my goodness. You're putting me on the spot here. Well, definitely Tower Power, yes. Phoenix Horns, yes. I was thinking about this band the other night because I grew up listening to their music ever since. I thank my brother Jesse for having their second double album, and folks can probably figure out who I'm talking about, Chicago.
Oh, sure. I saw Chicago with Earth, Wind and Fire, and they all get on stage together, and it's great.
Yes, they do each other's songs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw Chicago in Coney Island. They did a free concert. And it was amazing because now what they do, or they've been doing this for quite a few years, they perform practically the entire side 2 of their second album, which is called Ballet for a Girl in Buchanan, which starts out with Make Me Smile and goes into a few other songs, and then I'd say middle toward the end it goes into Color My World, and it wraps up with Make Me Smile as a coda, and they did that in Coney Island in a free show, and for those of us who remember the albums, I was sitting, with a few folks in our age range, and they're like, "Wow, they're doing side two of the album,"
right.
And people, it jarred their memories. It was amazing.
It's great, and everybody should support these great projects. And plug anything else you want to plug, because we have a bunch of great music people waiting, chomping at the bit to come on.
Well, I recently did liner notes for a couple other collections. One by Gladys Knight and the Pips of their works on Buddha and Columbia Records. Did a liner notes for Regina Bell for a collection of hers.
She's underrated.
Yes.
Tremendous singer.
Oh my God.
Tremendous, yeah.
I remember getting the promo records of Baby Come to Me and Make It Like It Was when I was in radio.
Yeah.
And I am currently working on liner notes. I can't say who the artist is of yet. I will drop one hint. It is a Philadelphia artist.
Okay.
I will go no further.
Now, you mentioned Gladys Knight. What do you think of the heat she's getting for singing the national anthem at the Super Bowl? What's your take on that?
I think, my take on it is, I'm honestly, I'm just going to stay away from that, Evan, only because I'm just going to stay away from it. It's
complicated.
It's a hot topic with folks. There are folks who feel that she shouldn't do it because of the lyrics in the Star Spangled Banner and whatnot. There are folks who say, well, she should. She should do it. She should sing. Is the Star Spangled Banner or is America the Beautiful? One of the two.
I think the Star Spangled Banner.
Okay. Well, either way, I try to stay away from the fray.
What about Chrisette Michele performing for Trump and losing a huge part of her fan base?
Well,
what do you think of that?
I have to say she was warned. She was warned by not only her fans, but her husband, who was her manager. When you go against the advice of folks and you're still going to go through it anyway, there's going to be consequences.
James Brown met with Nixon, infuriated part of his fan base, but he didn't lose his fan base.
He didn't lose his fan base, that is true, and we can all go about Sammy Davis Jr. hugging Nixon and whatnot. But I think right now, with the way social media operates and how it brings information immediately and people immediately react. And I think if there was social media back in 30, 40, 50 years ago, it would have been almost the similar effect.
See, I find it's almost like selective indignation. Somebody will look the other way. I still love R. Kelly, but Chrisette Michele is public enemy number one.
Look. I have written off R. Kelly a long time ago.
Yeah. I mean, it just seems like somebody gets a pass by one person and somebody else, it's like they're evil personified. And sometimes it doesn't seem fair to me.
Folks seem to pick and choose they seem to pick and choose the battles.
Yeah.
That's what.
And there's a lot of battles, and it's interesting that music is in the middle of a lot of them.
Yeah, and sometimes the choices folks make. I work as when I'm not doing liner notes, when I'm not doing podcasts, and which I've done many of them. I produce podcasts.
Plug that
real quick. But my point is that with what I work as a music consultant and an advisor for artists, and the one thing I always say to artists is, whatever decisions you make sure you vet the decisions thoroughly, because once you decide, it's going to have advantages, it's going to have consequences, and you need to weigh.
Like, I remember Ray Charles playing apartheid South Africa, and
yes,
I understood
Frank
the fury.
Frank Sinatra did
too. Sure. I understood the fury. Chrisette Michele doing a 30-minute set for Trump, I don't see it as being as terrible.
Well, given the climate that we're in, I will say this: I don't like the guy,
And that makes two of us. That makes two of us.
I'll leave it at that. But if when you look at, like, for example, Jennifer Holliday, who was going to do the show, and her audience said, "You do it, sayonara," and she listened. She listened. She weighed how it's like you have to weigh whether what is this going to help you or hurt you in the long run.
But the other side of the coin is the people who are furious at a Gladys Knight. What percentage of them have supported her in the past 30 years? Have bought a CD? Have gone to a concert? It's always nice to shout at somebody.
You have a legitimate point. You have a legitimate point. It's just with Gladys, It's
complicated. It's complicated. We'll leave it at that.
Yes.
So we're going to continue the discussion. Plug anything else real quick.
Well, I do a series of podcasts that are on Mixcloud and SoundCloud, but I'm moving more and more to Mixcloud nowadays. The Soulful Conversations podcast, which is now entering its 7th year. Yay. I do have a few folks lined up. I also have one called the 45 series, where I spotlight my favorite singles from way back when. There's also New Grooves Radio, which you and I get into the discussion about folks complaining about, there's no new music out there,
bull.
Blah blah
that's
blah,
bull.
which is BS.
Go see Edwin Vasquez this Thursday, 7 p.m. at the Bitter End. He did The Cape Man with Paul Simon and Mark Anthony. Virtuoso musician, $10 cover. Please don't tell me there's no good music out there. There's been no good music since back in the day. It's ridiculous.
It is, but and the point with New Grooves Radio is to show there is new music out there.
Of course,
there is new music, and the artists I focus mainly on our independent acts, independent artists. My thing is, Sony, Universal Music Group, Warner Music Group, they don't need my help. It's those who don't have those outlets.
And speaking of which, Antonio Jacobs will be joining us in a few, independent artists.
There you go. And finally, a new podcast that David Nathan and I are doing together called Soul Talkin', which is a conversation about soul and R&B music, but from the perspective of a journalist like himself who had interviewed so many people, over the past 50 years, and me chiming in with my recollections of meeting folks and interviewing them as well. We did one on Aretha Franklin recently, which has gotten some very good feedback, and we're working on another one regarding Aretha for an anniversary of her first single that came out on Atlantic Records that I'll be editing tonight after when I get back to Brooklyn.
You're a busy guy.
I'm very busy.
I've met tons of legends over the years, and my favorite story is when James Brown hugged me and said, "We are all brothers."
Yes.
It's like when one of your heroes is that nice to you.
Yes.
It's memorable. I'll tell you a funny story.
Yes.
Ike Turner did a gig at Summer Stage in Central Park. It was like he was running for president. He was kissing babies. He was taking pictures. He was signing autographs. The guy couldn't have been any nicer. It was almost ironic.
I interviewed Ike Turner for liner notes for a couple of CD reissues years ago, and all I can say, the man was a hoot. He was a trip.
Yeah,
he was a trip. Yeah. But a lot of
tremendous musician. Can't take that away from him.
Yeah, I mean the stuff with Tina aside, which is somewhat sad and tragic. As a musician, as a record producer, as one who's discovered talent, he was no joke.
Okay, so you just used the word aside. What is the line with our musical heroes, regardless of genre, where you say, I still love this guy. James Brown is one of my heroes, but, there were spousal abuse issues. At what point do you say, I can't separate the artist from the human being, the very flawed human being, and still support the art? And at what point, like you said with R. Kelly, I'm done with R. Kelly. What is the line?
Well, I will say with R. Kelly in particular, he's a predator. and he was going after underage girls.
There's a scathing documentary coming out on Michael Jackson.
There's been many scathing documentaries about Michael Jackson, and a lot of them just have they are what they are. There is some reasonable doubt because now you got folks who are saying, "Oh no, he didn't do it." Now they're saying, "Yes, he did," and there are folks who say, "Yes, he did," and they said no. So what the hell do we believe? Whereas with R. Kelly, I will say this, Evan. I was in Chicago in 2002 when R. Kelly was being hauled in front of the courts.
Right.
Okay, and knowing people in the Windy City, having family in the Windy City, knowing law enforcement in the Windy City, knowing journalists in the Windy City, they have all said this man has been witnessed going after young, underage girls of color. And these folks wanted to see him fry in 2002. It's Dream Hampton, God bless her. It took that and Lifetime to put something out there where finally it's like, okay, enough is enough. But between 2002, when I saw him being hauled up in front of the courts, and even before that, I mean, he married Aaliyah, and Aaliyah was underage. That right there was a huge bat signal saying, hey, something's wrong. But when it came to him, see, the thing is, Evan, it does get personal because I've got nieces.
We all do.
I've got nieces.
Yeah.
And a couple of those nieces were in that age range at that time when Robert, I don't even say R. Kelly, when Robert Kelly was doing his dirty crap. And my thing is, when it comes to when you go after children, I'm done with you, man. It's this.
So that's the line for you.
I'll say is, when you go after children, I'm done with you. When you go after women and you're not even anywhere near sorry, I gotta separate that from your music. Phil Spector, great record producer, no doubt, but the dude murdered somebody. He shot and killed a woman. He murdered someone. It's like, look, yeah, I still have Righteous Brothers records, but as far as a record producer, as far as a person, nah. Ike Turner, I was assigned to interview him, and he was very hesitant to talk to anybody.
Sure.
And I said to him, I said, Isaac Turner, which is his real name. I'm not here to talk about what went on between you and Tina when the mics were off. I want to know what happened as far as your music is concerned.
Sure.
I was working for a record label, and I was given an assignment.
Right.
So it was very.
So in that case, you're separating the two. You have an assignment.
Yeah.
And, I get it.
In that case, I had an assignment.
Yeah.
In that case, I had an assignment. So it varies. It's like case by case by case.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So speaking of interesting, we have musician Antonio Jacobs, poet John Winnell, musician Mike Roush coming in just a few. And anything else you want to plug real quick?
No, just
okay.
the podcasts I do are on Mixcloud. It's mixcloud.com/musicmankevin, and just look them up. And with Soul Talk, and it's mixcloud.com/soultalk and SOULTALKIN.
All right, and we'll be right back with Antonio Jacobs, folks. Don't you dare go anywhere. This is the Eclectic Mix, known as the Evan Ginzburg Show. We'll be right back.
Round and round, it's all she knows. Play the part of being used. The more she has, the more I show. I wanna be abused by you. Her body's like an undertow. You're drowning everything in me. The way she moves, the way she knows everything I need. This night, she shines like diamonds. So fine, so high, so low. I fall down, but only 'cause I'm wasted. I'm so down with everything she's taken. It's like the more you break me, the more I like to take. Oh. Round and round, it's all a show. I'm the one that's being used. The scars are just the afterglow of living on a fuse. This night, she shines like diamonds. So fine, so high, so low. I fall down, but only 'cause I'm wasted. I'm so down with everything she's taken. It's like the more you break me, the more I like to. I fall down only 'cause I'm wasted. I'm so down with everything she's taken. Like the more that she break me, the more I like to take.
Okay, we are back with the Evan Ginzburg Show at villageconnectionradio.com with my very special guest co-host Kevin Goins, and we are joined by musician Antonio Jacobs, who's going to do a short set for us. And great to have you back, Antonio.
Thank you for having me, Evan. I enjoy your show a lot. I watch it, and I always enjoy your guests and the diversity
Thank
of
you.
the different folks that you have on. And I'm just glad to be a part of this community.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, let's see here. An instant, a jiffy, a second, a minute, a moment, an hour, a day, a week, a fortnight, a common month, A season, a year, a biennium, a lustrum, a decade, a generation, a lifespan. A century, a millennium, a terasecond, a mega annum, an age, an epoch, an era. How long does it take for our sun to orbit the galaxy? And neon, the life of a star, the age of the universe. Time waits for no man. Tempest fugit, you got all the time in the world. You should use it. Time is on our side. It is against us. Take your time and hurry up. It contradicts us. Clocks and watches, timepieces and chronometers, hourglasses and sundials, rulers and monitors. When the time is time, to take your barometer, like taking your temperature with a thermometer. Don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. You can't change time, it has all been done before. Past is your memories, present is now. The future isn't written, you control the how. You're getting older every day while I still stay the same. You take all the credit while I take all the blame. Flip that script to get your fortune and your fame. You can print your game, come on and stake your claim. House cannot stand without a foundation. You should go to work, stop going on vacation. Choose your career path, choose your vocation. It's your inspiration. An instant, a jiffy, a second, a minute, a moment, an hour, a day, a week, a fortnight, a common month, a season, a year, a biennium, a lustrum, a decade, a generation, a lifespan, a century, a millennium, a terasecond, a mega annum, an age, an epoch, an era. How much money take for our sun to orbit the galaxy? And neon, the life of a star, the age of the universe. Let me see. How about... Okay. The pain in my heart is distinguished. The pain in my heart is... The pain in my heart is extinguished. The light in my soul has gone now. My reason for living has left me, no longer feeling distinguished. I know this life's about. This emptiness is rather heavy. Words fail me, I'm not a linguist. Why bother with form? How does it help me? The meaning has set with the sun. Darkness shades my ambition, the paralysis wrecking me. Over before it has even begun. I'm a man without a mission. Is there any hope for redemption as heaven fills up with saints? What are we left on the earth with? But it's foolish to be this clueless. Entropy is real. There must be a little joy somewhere, looking for a little to steal. Looking for a little to steal. Looking for a little to steal. Thank you. One more. Let's see. Okay, let's try. Let's see. I hardly knew ye. Our moments were brief, but the memories we shared were sweet. You gave me courage whenever we meet. No matter what we do, we land on our feet. But the world is cold when there's no one to hold. It is easy to throw up your hands, as they say. In spite of it all, I can still hear your call, even though you're light years away. You are an angel, loved unconditionally. Optimist should be your pedigree. Never half empty, closer to free. With a generous heart as big as the sea. But the world is cold when there's no one to hold. It is easy to throw up your hands, as they say. In spite of it all, I can still hear your call, even though you're light years away. But the world is cold when there's no one to hold. It is easy to throw up your hands, as they say. In spite of it all, I can still hear your call, even though you're light years away. Even though you're light years away. Even though you're light years away. Thank you.
Antonio Jacobs. And when we come back, we're going to talk music with Antonio, and also coming on the show, poet John Winnell and musician Mike Roush. Be right back, folks.
Round and round, it's all she knows. Play the part of being used. The more she hides, the more I show. I wanna be abused by you. Your body's like an undertow. You're drowning everything in me. The way she moves, the way she knows.
All right, and we are back with the Evan Ginzburg Show at villageconnectionradio.com. Joining us, Antonio Jacobs. And tell us about your new project.
Okay, so my new project is called Hope, and the idea is hope, and well, I brought this for you,
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
That's yours.
Bearing gifts. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
And so, as some of you might know, when I was on the show last, I had just 14 months to this date, on November 27th of 2017, my wife Sandra Hope Peden had died from stage 4 metastatic breast cancer, and it's been a pretty hard time for me, but fortunately music is one of those things that helps us get through the most difficult moments.
They say that music is physically, mentally, psychologically therapeutic. They're using it with Alzheimer's patients. They're using it in nursing homes. What do you think, Kevin?
Well, music can heal. Music can definitely heal, and we've seen it. You've seen YouTube videos of folks using music to for different purposes, be it to help calm someone or to help someone regain their memory of certain events. I've seen where music was used for Alzheimer's patients.
Oh yeah.
So it's I think it can be used as a healing force.
When I was 20, my dad died at 57, and I said, if I sit home, I'm going to go out of my mind. And I went to live music, and it helped get me through it. And ditto when certain friends died young, and my mother recently. And I'm with you, man. Music is healing.
Yeah.
So I wrote this project in honor of my wife. Her middle name is Hope. And I see it everywhere. There's the word hope, people doing things that inspire hope. And I feel like even though she's no longer with us, her influence is in the universe. And I just wanted to I wanted to dedicate her to this project. It's 6 songs. It's available on anywhere where you can buy digital music. That would include Spotify and CD Baby and Tidal and all of those lovely places where you can buy music these days.
And you're also a music teacher, and I'm going to throw this out for both you guys. I think there's a terrible lack of particularly music appreciation, music history in the schools. And in general, they cut music and art programs.
Well, I have to disagree with you with that one, Evan, because I work in a school that is blessed with a marvelous music program.
But is that the exception to the rule, or is that the norm?
No, there have been plenty of groups and foundations that have come into New York City in particular to introduce programs. You have Education Through Music that helps build string orchestra programs throughout New York City schools. You have Little Kids Rock, which has instituted a phenomenal modern band program throughout the city of New York and in other cities as well. And then there's Music and Arts that does a component about teaching kids about Broadway musicals and dance.
That's
so
great.
There are programs out there.
That's great.
It's it's a misnomer to think that our kids are not developing or being exposed to the arts, because they are, and I have to give credit where credit is due. The New York City Department of Education has the Office of Arts and Special Projects, which is a specific division that's dedicated to the arts. And the individuals who run that department take it very, very seriously. They take their jobs very seriously.
Yes.
And so they provide funding and they provide support and professional development and getting resources out there to all of the music teachers.
Let me flip it then. What is the role of the parent in taking a kid by the hand to a concert, to a live music event, to the theater, etc., so on, especially in a place like New York where from Memorial Day to Labor Day. You could go out every night of the week and see something free. That's great.
Absolutely.
Instead of using the cell phone, video games, the computer, etc., as babysitters.
Well,
I mean, when I was a kid, my parents took me to see Sarah Vaughan, Ella Fitzgerald, Mel Torme, the Spinners, Nancy Wilson. I could go on and on and on.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I do what I do, because I was blessed at an early age to appreciate the arts.
Well, if I can jump in, because we discussed this before we went on the air about a cultural event that I attended in Lincoln Center. Your poet, who's coming on next, we discussed about this, where Carmen de Havilland, the wonderful, longtime dancer, ballerina, prima, big time, when she performed a free show at Lincoln Center. It was in honor of her departed husband, the great Jeffrey Holder. And here she is, well into her 80s, and she was dancing, giving, I'd say, Misty Copeland the run for the money many times over. So, but the thing is, when I went there were a huge cross-section of young and old.
Yeah.
Huge multicultural cross-section, but it was great to see a lot of young kids there.
Oh, yeah.
Young kids of different races, creeds, and colors, accompanying their parents, accompanying their grandparents, accompanying their aunts, uncles, or whomever, or to see this. So, like he was saying, there are resources that are providing this for the communities.
Let me take it one step further. The library system, people are pretty unaware. They have free concerts, free movies, free classes, free exercise.
If I can jump in,
Sure.
because I live in Coney Island, and Coney Island has a kick-ass library there. I go, and there are kids there every day taking in the free events, the free shows, the free
That's right.
movies, the artists that come in to perform for free. There are crowds there.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's wonderful to see. So the resources are out there.
The library also has something called Canopy, which
Yes.
streams some of the greatest movies in the history of cinema, including much of the Criterion Collection. I mean, it's amazing the resources the library alone offer, but a lot of people are oblivious to it.
I think some may be oblivious, but there are a lot of folks who are very much aware, because when I'm in the library at Coney Island, which is on Mermaid Avenue, I see parents and kids bringing in and checking out books every time I'm there.
That's great.
Books, music, DVDs, and they're not just borrowing DVDs of the umpteen seasons of Games of Thrones here. They're borrowing like movies featuring Sidney Poitier or Harry Belafonte, for example, which was Buck and the Preacher. I saw someone check that out the other day.
This is New York City. I mean, there are resources, and a lot of them are free. Museums have free nights. The Morgan Library has a free night on Friday, and they also have live jazz that happens on Friday nights. Carnegie Hall has incentives to have concerts there, and then they offer incentives for people to go. Lincoln Center, of course.
Yes.
And Music Under New York, you could just be traveling in the subway system and hear a variety of different vested and highly trained and very talented musicians and performers.
Right.
So you could just simply walk throughout the city of New York.
So as an educator, as a music teacher, what would you tell parents listening? What should they do for their children as far as the arts?
Just give them exposure, give them access to the many things that exist. Go out of their comfort zone. Learn about different things. What I do is Tuesdays, contractually, we have to reach out to parents through something called parent engagement Tuesday afternoons. Mm-hmm. We're supposed to stay in touch with parents on some level. What I've done with that time is, instead of just phoning parents to tell them how bad their kids were, I take that time to offer workshops to parents to come in so that they can see what their kids are learning in school in my class. So I teach them about modern band. I teach them about African drumming. Wow. I teach them, how to play the recorder. I run a chess program, so I invite the parents to come and play chess with their kids.
You should be running for office instead of some of these buffoons. You got 461 people running for president.
Become the New York
461 people.
Well, that's less than the 1,700 that ran the last time, right?
1,700?
Yeah, it was seven. There was a list. There was a list
Really?
of yeah.
You taught me something. Wow.
Yeah, and you've got the 23 people running for public advocate. So there's that.
Yeah.
Kevin, what do you think of that? You have somebody who's so involved in helping kids.
Well,
he should be running for office.
Well, and God bless you for what you're doing, and whatnot. The thing is that when you're running for office, you're entering into a vortex where you have to almost become a completely different individual animal.
Well, okay, I speak from experience. My wife, Sandra,
yes,
ran for the New York City Council in 2013.
I remember that.
And it was in the 27th district, which represents Southeast Queens.
Yes.
And the politics is a very strange game because it isn't about who's qualified to do the job. It's about relationships.
Yes.
It's about money. And one of the positive things that they've done is campaign finance reform, which is the idea that when you're funding campaigns, it can't just be all willy-nilly. You have to give people an equitable chance to be able to be a viable candidate. But you still have to raise money in order to compete.
Right.
So, and it's not something that I personally would want to pursue. I am very heavily active in the union, in my union, the United Federation of Teachers, which is strange because it's a local union, but it's such a powerful union. Sometimes people can overlook that. We're affiliated with New York City's, the New York State Union of Teachers, and with the American Federation of Teachers as well.
And the UFT also has a strong national presence.
It does, yes. And so I'm very active in the union, and that's been the way that I've been able to do things on a political level. Mm-hmm. But I don't see how being in political office, me personally, would help benefit society. I feel like my work as a music educator.
I'm just saying as a giver instead of a taker, which many politicians are.
Well, I don't know. I think politicians are people too. And you've got givers and you've got takers. You got givers and you've got takers, and I find that there are a lot of very good, moral, dedicated, hardworking, conscientious individuals who work in politics.
Oh, absolutely.
Because my wife worked for the city council for 20 years.
But there are some who, if they were on fire, I wouldn't spit on them. So it varies.
You get your rotten apples.
Yeah, you do.
Anywhere you go, get your rotten apples.
In any profession, on any level of life, or in society, you're going to find that there's good and there's bad.
Of course,
that's just the way it is.
Lawyers,
there are
doctors,
good people, and there are good people
yeah.
in politics too. I don't knock politicians. I just want them to be held accountable for what we elected them to do.
Yes.
And if they're supposed to represent the people, then they should be representing the people.
Right.
Let me just say something about New York specifically. Mm-hmm. The real estate interests own the politicians for the most part. For the most part, not a blanket statement. When a mom and pop business, including music clubs, put in 7 years, and all of a sudden the rent is doubled or tripled, and they're forced to go under. When a BB King's, where I saw 100 shows packed, can't pay their rent, that's an issue.
Yes.
It affects the arts.
Yes, real estate does have a stranglehold on society in general. We're beholden to the people who own the real estate. We're beholden to them. I'm a renter myself, and I haven't. If something was to happen to the property, it's still my responsibility.
Right.
But I don't own this property, and so it's a mass inequity, where you have a very small percentage of people who control the masses, simply because of the fact that many of us, where we live, is not something that we possess. It's not part of our possessions.
Right.
And you can see this. It's a very thin line between being in the working class and being part of the homeless.
I just read that one music club was paying $33,000 a month rent, and they said we have to go. We just can't do it.
Yeah.
In Manhattan, $33,000 a month. I mean, it's absurd. It's absurd. That's a lot of beer. Yeah, that's a lot of wine.
Yeah.
33,000. That's before you're paying the staff and everything else.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, that would be one thing that we would want to talk to our local politicians about trying to.
But they just voted down, again, the lease runs out and you can double it, triple it legally. And that's shameful. It's shameful.
Look what happened to the late Bobby Robinson and his record store up in Harlem.
Tell us, for those who don't know.
That was, he had been there for decades. Decades and decades and decades.
And Harlem becomes gentrified, and what happened with the rent?
Well, okay, yeah, and Harlem did become gentrified, but when the lease was up and the rent went sky high, he had to go, and that was sad.
Tragic.
It was sad because he had been in that spot for, long before any of us, our poet may be excluded, but who was coming up, he had been running that store before many of us were even born, and that was where, if you were an artist performing at the Apollo Theater, you went to Bobby's record shop.
Yeah.
You went there to sign autographs. You went there to check out what your records are selling, but mainly you went there to say, "Hi, Bobby, what's going on?" Shake hands, kiss babies, and make friends.
And mom and pop businesses are all at risk in New York.
Yeah.
I walk down, neighborhoods in Queens. Every third store is shut down. How does a mom and pop business make it? Every third store is a bank, a drugstore, a chain store. So yes, there are good, honest, hardworking politicians, but a lot of them are beholden to corporations, and
it's gonna bite them in the tuchus in the end. You have this deal with Amazon coming into Long Island City, and if you think it's just the politicians, they tried to go around the city council in order to get that deal. They just went right behind them, and when Corey Johnson, the Speaker of the House, heard about it, he was livid.
Wow.
It's like, you can't do this. You have to ask our permission at least.
Billionaires do a lot of things that others can't do, but they somehow manage.
At the very least.
Anyway, Antonio, plug anything you want to plug.
Okay, so my project is available on my website, antoniojacobs.com. You can also find it under my nom de guerre, Black Leader. That's Lieder. I also am I'm promoting my composer card collection. And that's the card I made for myself because I am a composer, but I do make composer cards for educational purposes for everyone, ranging from Duke Ellington to Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart to Andrew Lloyd Webber to Palestrina. You name it, I've probably made a card for them.
Wow. Music history. That's what I was saying before.
Nice.
Yeah.
So,
Nice.
So you can always check me out on AntonioJacobs.com. Again, everybody likes their music the way they like their music these days. So any digital platform that you like to use, Pandora or Rhapsody or Apple Music, my music is available there. My new project is called Hope, and it's in memory of my loving wife, Sandra Hope Beaton.
There you go. Antonio Jacobs. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And when we come back, poet John Winnell and musician Mike Rausch. Am I pronouncing it correctly?
You are.
Rausch. Okay, we'll be right back, folks.
Another shot to make it strong, sober not to shake it off. Another night to make it all. It's so exciting. A hot kiss could start a fire. Whatever it is can make things high. You know, a mess when it's inside. It's so inviting. Over and over, I watch you again. I want to be closer. Denial caught between the
with the Evan Ginzburg Show, and I am Ray Milland, and this is Rosie Greer. We are the thing with two heads. Yeah, remember that movie?
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, we are joined by Mike Roush, who is a noted musician, as well as poet John Winnell, who's a regular on the show. And we're going to continue our discussion on the arts. And what do you say, Kevin, when somebody makes a blanket statement? For example, an old school R&B fan goes, "That rap music is all noise," and I'm like, what about Public Enemy? What about De La Soul? What about Tribe Called Quest?
Well, my father always said to me,
Stop ruffling papers, John. You'll be on later.
my dad always said to me, you answer back with facts and evidence, and you present the facts and you present the evidence to back it up. You know, when people make blanket statements and or come off with comments, you go like, you know, like I did a Facebook post a while ago where it had me like this going, you know, this, and it said the look you have when you read the comments that are on social media.
I think part of the problem is everybody has a forum, and some of the people are idiots. What do you think, Mike?
That's basically what it is. Is now everyone is on Facebook, and anyone can say what they want to say, post what they want to post, and everyone's right. You know, if you posted that, you know, and I slightly disagree, you're wrong. You know, I take that disagreement to that next level.
Yeah, where you try to report someone and have them banned for like 5, 10, 15, 30 days.
Or it becomes cursing and threats.
Yes.
And,
he said that artist is you know good. You know, that's BS. You know,
like I'll give you an example. I'm on a music page called Chicago Soul to Soul, which is on Facebook, great music page, and someone made a blanket statement saying that the Funk Brothers of Motown Records were nothing but cookie cutter.
that's absurd.
Yeah, I took a big deep breath, and I responded back, and I basically said, "Bull, fill in the blank," and I explained, made my point, and I said, "Listen to the following," and I posted a track from a Michael Jackson collection called Stripped, which is basically him with just certain instruments. And it was a track of Michael and Jackson 5's song Darling Dear, which is just Michael, the string section, and James Jamerson, their bass guitarist.
The great James Jamerson.
The great James Jamerson,
who is not cookie cutter.
Who was basically almost given free reign to play whatever. It's like, Barry Gordy telling him what to play is like.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
Wasn't
silly.
that?
It's almost like saying the Wrecking Crew, the same thing.
No, thank you. Tell that to Glenn Campbell.
Wasn't James Jamerson the
so
chords on
ignorant.
My Girl?
Bum bum bum.
Right,
bum bum
right.
bum. But the thing is that that is what he's known for by the masses. But when you listen to tracks like I Was Made to Love Her by Stevie Wonder or Darling Dear, where you hear this very elaborate bass line. And I posted it, I said, tell me if this is cookie cutter. And of course the guy tried to argue back, and I'm just like, reference back to my post. You know, and I basically signed off by saying, by saying to him, you may leave the dinner table, you're done eating.
You know, the answer is, narrow-mindedness creates narrow-mindedness.
Well, I think not so. Well, narrow-mindedness creates narrow-mindedness, but also when people make blanket statements and they don't have the evidence to back it up, or they just don't know, or they're ignorant.
I read that's the problem with social. The press. So we have. I think they created that by limiting the press. So a lot of newspapers have gone out of business. So some of them are still on the internet. When you had, and they, not that they can't be biased either, but at least you have educated people writing summations, and there's some historical referencing to what they're talking about, and they bring that up in good criticism of whatever it is that they're focusing on.
Right.
You know, the internet, you have any jerk who has a computer, which is everybody.
Keyboard warrior.
You know, so where do you have any reference point? You're just talking off the top of your head.
Kevin, you'll appreciate this.
It invalidates them.
One person writes, Earth, Wind, and Fire is my grandfather's music. I'm just like, shut up. You know, it's some of the greatest art ever created. You know, just because you could say... You know what amazes
and
me?
So what if it's their grandfather's music?
No, but they're dismissing it like it's like.
Oh, but that's a complete ignorant.
Well. Speaking on behalf of my two older brothers who are grandfathers who bought their records, you know, I would say, yeah, thank you very much. Because
That's right.
If it weren't for my brother Jesse bringing home the album Head to the Sky in 1973, then 7-year-old Kevin would not have known who the hell Earth, Wind, and Fire was. So when someone says, that's your grandfather's music, I say, on behalf of my brothers Jim Jr. and Jesse Goins, I say thank you.
Let me throw this out for the distinguished panel. What about the whole Bruno Mars culture bandit? Everybody's a culture bandit.
Appropriation.
What's that about?
Bruno Mars is an amazing musician.
Of course.
I don't understand with the internet being this platform for feigned anonymity, it makes it easier for people to express their implicit bias, and it just happens naturally. Whatever preconceived notions they have about anything are just going to automatically be presented whenever they tap their fingers on a keyboard.
But then thousands of geniuses click like that they approve it and chime in, and they're wrong too.
And then you get folks who are more, I don't just say educated, but what more well in the know, who'll tell them, hello, time out. You know, is that to say Tina Marie is guilty of that? Is that to say Bill Medley,
Dennis
the Righteous
Coffey
Brothers?
from the Funk Brothers.
If that's to say, or
Booker T and the MGs.
Or Mila Castillo of Tower of Power. It's like, you know, I don't want to say what I call cultural appropriation. I already said it on social media, and I don't want to say it because it's a family show. But I just missed it. It's just like, look, you know, yes, you got people who were, if you want to call it the culture bandits. If you look at the history of records being covered in the 1950s, yeah.
It's a different scenario.
That's a whole different scenario.
It even goes back further than that. But
Well, true, but...
Race records.
right.
the Carter...
the covering of the race records, right.
Or the Carter family going in, recording songs, or selling the, and then just going out and claiming that is...
That's theirs when it really ain't, yeah.
I mean, it's an argument, I mean...
I think when people just need to the information is out there regarding the history of music, of certain
Booker T and the MGs. How many records were they on Stax? I mean, how could you say they're culture bandits?
And
ridiculous.
They're multicultural.
Exactly.
I guess you could call the Beatles and the Rolling Stones the cultural appropriators as well.
Everyone who came over from the British invasion who were raiding R&B songs left and right, but come on.
But they reinterpreted everything. Isn't that what, the creative spark? Everything is a reinterpretation.
What if I said klezmer music, Eastern, Jewish, European, there were black klezmer players, they're culture bandits. They'd be shouting racist from here to tomorrow.
That's like calling Johnny Mathis a cultural appropriator because he's cultural appropriating pop music.
Of course, it's nonsense. It's all nonsense.
Well, we live in sad times, I think.
I don't want to say we live in sad times. We live in times where folks, like you just said, they get behind a keyboard, they make these statements, and they think that, my statement is the fact. No, it's a statement.
Of course.
It's a statement. But it's a statement unless you back it up with facts and evidence.
But we also live in a society where facts and opinion are blurred. The idea is that whatever you're thinking is not necessarily aligned with truth.
Right.
The idea of notions of myths are being attached to truth. And George Washington cut down the cherry tree. This is a myth.
No, he lived on Cherry Street.
I don't think people know the difference between fact and opinion. Somebody will go, Donald Trump is making America great again. Somebody else will go, Donald Trump is Hitler. These are opinions. It's not a fact,
well,
but
go
they claim it's a fact.
Well, go back to the whole Funk Brothers scenario I was in. The person responded, "Well, that's your opinion," and I said, "Listen to what I posted. Okay, listen again. If you want, I can drag some more evidence out there." So it's like, yeah, I may have stated opinion, but the thing is, it was a known fact that that Jamerson was known to go off the beaten path, and I had the proof because, thank God, Motown Records, with their 8-track machines in the mid '60s, recorded everything.
This just popped into my head. You're on many great Facebook music groups. What about the ridiculous groups that'll say, like, Bobby Womack, Curtis Mayfield, Sam Cooke? Which one would you kick out of, that's ridiculous.
I avoid those like the plague. I don't even get involved.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that insulting to great artists? I mean, why even go there?
It's people trying to start a conversation, and if that's a conversation they want to start, to quote Tower of Power, knock yourself out. Yeah. But I'm not going to volunteer. I don't subscribe to that point of view, said Gordon Sumner. So I just avoid them.
Anyway, our buddy Mike Roush has traveled all the way from Stamford, Connecticut. Tell us a little about yourself.
My music background's more of into like the punk, hardcore foundation. But kind of going back to what you were saying before, and this is a conversation that we had, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, kind of blending that with the cultural appropriation conversation we're just having. You said to me, like, music is notes. How is Bruno Mars, let's take it, how is he stealing, white person's music? Are those notes different than the notes Michael Jackson uses, or the notes that...
Notes have no color.
The Beatles use, or the notes that, anyone uses, right? So those people who claiming, this guy, is now coming and stealing someone's music, like, where does that...
I think Bruno Mars honors those who come before him. He's playing quality music. I know plenty of white blues players who worship those who came before them, and I don't see this stealing.
He comes in and he plays a similar form of music, and all of a sudden, oh no, he's no good because he's not what that preconceived notion of that music is supposed to be.
You want to talk about stealing, talk about some of the record company owners, and that's not a blanket statement either. There are good ones and bad ones.
Right. And here, even diving into my realm and my hat in the band that we brought up, Bad Brains.
For those who don't know, tell us about Bad Brains.
Big time, African American pioneers of like punk, hardcore music.
You bet.
And when they first started doing it, nobody saw that diversity within that kind of music. That
I love Fishbone.
Yeah, Fishbone's
awesome.
Angela Moore.
Living Color.
Living Color is great.
Those guys, I believe the singer from Living Color filled in for Bad Brains for a few years in the early 90s.
Corey did. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think he did like 1, 2 maybe European tours with them when HR had left like the second or third time. Who was the lead singer. But yeah, that to me, I think that's the most important band to me, because that took this music that I had first started hearing, the Ramones and the Misfits and all that kind of thing. And now here's this band that I didn't, at the time, expect to be playing this kind of music, and then throwing reggae into it. That just kind of made me like open my mind. Like, I was definitely, if it's not this music, it's no good type of mindset. And then this music that I've loved, previously comes into my life. And they don't look like they're supposed to look like. They don't play just the music they're supposed to play. They're throwing, Rastafarian, and reggae and all that kind of thing into this like angry, aggressive music. And it just, hey, this is good too. If they're playing this kind of music that previously I didn't really, I don't want to say I didn't like it, but just didn't feel like I needed to dive into, that made me like dive into like that music and other kinds of music. It's like, an individual doesn't need to just stick to one genre.
So what do you say to people who make a blanket statement? They'll say, for example, I hate punk, I hate what about a classical fan who will say that R&B is just noise? I mean, what's your take on that?
Well,
Right, that's a big thing. Here, keep on the Bad Brains conversation. Like, yes, their music is loud and aggressive, but if you listen to like what they're actually saying, it's very, unifying and peaceful, and bringing everyone together. And
I'm glad you said that.
Right.
I'll go to a concert down at Metrotech, for example. You're from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
So you go down to Metrotech. It's every race, creed, color, age, on stage and off. And everybody's getting along. It's not like social media where we're murdering each other.
Right.
Or politics where we're murdering each other.
And
you go to a concert, everybody's happy.
I just went to one last night.
Who'd you see?
I saw Madball, who was on my sweatshirt.
Tell us about Madball.
Another early, New York hardcore pioneering band.
Really?
Yes.
I don't know.
The lead singer is the half brother of Roger Moret from Agnostic Front, who was probably, to me, again, blanket statements, the most important hardcore band coming out of the 80s. They just, the founders, the ones who, what you have today is because of them.
I live in Queens. We have murals of the Ramones in Queens.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And they named a street after Joey
Yeah.
Ramone several years ago.
Yep.
I once bumped into one of the Ramones at Tower. I forget which one. It was a long time ago, and we just started talking about R&B. The guy loved R&B.
Yeah. See, there's another thing,
Exactly. Look, I mean, you never know who's into what.
Yeah.
I remember meeting the late Tim Hauser from the Manhattan Transfer at the Downstairs Records, and I came up to him and said, "Hey, look, I love your album Offbeat of Avenues." This was back in 1991. And he said, "Thanks." He said, "Hey, are you into Detroit R&B?" I'm like, "Well, yeah." At the time, to me, Detroit R&B was Motown. So he said, "No, you gotta go before Motown." And that's when I first heard about an artist that I later interviewed, in the late '90s, named Andre Williams.
Oh yeah, I saw Andre Williams. Yeah.
Who wrote "Shake a Tail Feather" and "Twine Time."
He's a showman.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I interviewed him back in many years later, 98, whole other story. But Tim Hauser exposed me to the music of Andre Williams and the $5, which was his group on Fortune Records in the early mid-50s. So, and to get on your point regarding, classical, it's a funny story. I had a customer back during my years at HMV, the record store on West 72nd and Broadway that existed during the 90s. And he said, "I've been listening to classical music all my life, and I want to get into soul and rhythm and blues." So he asked, "What should I listen to?" I said, "Well, look.
What's going on? Songs in the Key of Life."
No.
Yeah.
This is what I did. I said, "Okay, you're from classical. You like R&B." I gave him 2 4-CD box sets that came from Europe of music from Philadelphia International.
Oh yeah.
Why? Tom Bell and Bobby Martin.
There you go.
2 classically trained musicians, arrangers, and producers who along with Jack Faith and Lenny Palooka, but mainly those 2 men. But Tom Bell, who had a birthday, turned 76 this weekend. He was from a classical background,
Wow.
and when he was asked to do R&B in the early 60s, he's like, "Really?" And look at the body of work he's done. So when this customer saw the name, I said, "Well, look for the name Tom Bell on these records." He wrote a letter to HMV saying, "Kevin recommended me these recordings. They're wonderful. I want to get to know more about these arrangers who worked with them." So I gave him practically every flippin' Tom Bell related record that
They
was
called it
available.
early Elton, the Tom Bell session.
That's the Tom Bell sessions with the Elton John. "Mama Can't Buy You Love," right?
I've seen thousands and thousands of concerts. To this day, I say the Spinners circa 75 or 76 with Felipe Wynn on lead.
Yes.
Tom Bell producing them. I saw them live. I think it was the greatest thing I've ever seen, and I've seen everybody.
Yeah.
It was so tremendous.
Yep.
I was a kid too, so like my eyes were wide, but it's so great. Felipe
That's why I
Wynn.
like things like I like comic book movies because sometimes the musicians who are hired, the music supervisors and the composers, they're exposing another audience to that fine music. You know, hearing Rubber Band Man while I'm watching the Avengers movie was just like and then having those reference points is you know, it gives me hope for society, honestly.
Or the Guardians of the Galaxy soundtrack.
Exactly.
Which went through the roof.
Oh
Yes,
my
great,
God.
Great stuff.
Yes.
So you guys are the perfect guys to ask. What did you think of Bill Maher's bit the other night where he was basically attacking comic book fans?
He's a comedian. That's his job. His job is to make fun of things. But the other thing about comedians is that they shed light on areas that people don't like to think about or talk about. So I'm never offended by anything that any comedian says because their job is to shine lights on things.
I agreed with parts of it. I mean, you know, the last 20 minutes of every comic book movie where they're flying through the air, punching each other, and buildings are shattering, it's pretty much the same. It's not Citizen Kane. But at the same time, Mao's and American Splendor
That's not what he was referring to.
Right.
Mouse is a little different from the Avengers.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
He's not. He did. I saw that
Yeah.
show. He's not talking about those kinds of things. Those are.
Yeah, he's talking about
that's a little
superheroes.
different. Mouse comic rightfully so, won a Pulitzer Prize, and I've met and spoken several times.
But I'm saying that is
that's a
art.
whole other ball game.
Well, also
That's not Marvel Comics.
right. Well, also I'm going to try because I did respond to it because I said that I felt that he showed some degree of ignorance because there was a period during the 80s when comic books, and I'm going to give credit to where credit due, DC Comics 1985, The Dark Knight Returns, which basically took Batman on a whole different trajectory. This was not a comic book that you wanted a 6, 7, 8-year-old kid to read. This was a graphic novel.
Yeah.
And it was very dark. It was futuristic. The writing was brilliant. The Joker finally got killed off, but but besides
Spoiler alert. No, I'm kidding.
Hey, well,
Yeah, it's 30 years ago.
Now I can't read it.
34 years old, but beside the point, it was a well-written book, a well-written series of books. It was
Look,
3 volumes.
I'm 103 years old. I'll still read Will Eisner to this day. I mean, I love comics, but some of the comic book movies, I'll forget about it the next morning. So I kind of see.
Yeah,
I kind of see his point also.
Yeah, but he's talking about movies.
Do we need
and whatnot.
X-Men 17? I mean, after a while, you know what bothers me with comic book movies these days? They'll kill a character and then they'll go, "Oh, reboot, remake."
Well, but the thing is, in the comic books, though, you can kill off the character, but they're going to bring him back.
Yeah.
They're going to bring that. That is a trajectory.
But isn't that cheating your emotional involvement?
No.
You're not going to bring back the main guy in Citizen Kane. You're not going to bring him
we're
back.
We're not talking Citizen Kane. We're talking comic books.
Yeah,
but the thing is that.
What do you think, John?
That's been the trajectory of comic books for years, man. You could kill off the Green Goblin in Spider-Man. He's going to come back in one way, shape, or form or another.
And it's fantasy, of
It's
course.
fantasy.
These things.
But my point is that, let's say Walking Dead. They go, it's Rick's last episode, and everybody's all emotional. Then the guy flies away, and we're going to do a whole nother series with Rick. And you have this emotional involvement in the thing.
But also, Evan, I'm going to say is there was a time when the comic book writers started taking a stand on social issues and rolling in comic books. There was I forgot the number of this particular Spider-Man comic book where they dealt with drug addiction.
Oh yeah.
Okay, when spoiler alert, Harry Osborn, Peter Parker's best friend, was addicted to pills, and the comic book code authority, which were the gatekeepers, to make sure every comic book was pure and not going to go off the reservation, meaning be conservative. The comic book code said, we're not going to approve this comic book. Stan Lee said, I don't give up. I'm putting this out anyway.
Yeah.
And it was in the comic book world in 1971. That took guts. So you had writers like John Romita, Chris Claremont of the X-Men, basically taking on social issues. You had Stan Lee with his Stan Soapbox, where he did commentaries. He did one on racism in 1968. So there is that.
I love comics. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. don't see some of the movies as masterpieces.
Oh, the movies are for entertainment purposes only.
Primarily, movies are just there to entertain. You might be able to talk about some sort of moral things that happen, and they can be very complex. But the movie demographic is a rather interesting animal. You're talking about you have the groups of people who just know these characters from the movies alone, as opposed to the people who have followed them as comic book aficionados for years and years and years, and the expectations of those two different groups are radically different.
Sure.
You also have to look at the fact that this is mythology. This is a current modern mythology. This is what's taken the place of Greek and Norse mythology, Egyptian mythology. That was the religions of the time. This is the belief systems for many people nowadays. All right.
But isn't there a line where if you treat Star Wars or whatever as a religion, you're crossing a line? I mean,
I don't know. I think that human beings have developed belief systems to enable them to.
Star Wars is.
I'm a fan of spaghetti westerns, and it's not my religion.
Is more complicated. I mean, Lucas was very influenced by the Japanese cinema and Japanese culture and
Kurosawa.
Very much so. I mean, he threw all and westerns, serials. I mean, bringing back Buck Rogers and all that stuff from the 30s and. I mean, that maybe was the first. I mean, it's
Star Wars is all about imperialism and imperialism and the concept of there being a code, and there's a lot of Japanese influence in what Lucas created. But these are creative forces. Stanley, Lucas, Spielberg. These are these creative forces that we have that created this mythology that nowadays you're more likely to see a child with a Captain America T-shirt than wearing a crucifix.
Okay. Right. But I think Ma's point was Peter Pan syndrome. The guy's 35, he lives at home, and he's watched Spider-Man, 37 times, and maybe he's not embracing adulthood at some point.
A BS exaggeration.
I don't know. Jim.
A BS exaggeration.
we had a show here. I'm not sure. Right, Jim?
Yep. Sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, Mike, you came all the way from Stanford. Tell us about your music.
I was just recently in October. I left my band called Charge for Battle. I started it in February of 2016 with a good friend of mine who's still a guitar player in that band. I guess I would call the music somewhere like a mashup of like thrash metal, punk, hardcore type of deal. Our first EP actually just came out about a week ago.
Okay, plug it.
Great.
That's on. Well, it should be on all the social media and all the streaming platforms soon. Right now, it's on Bandcamp, so that can be checked out. 4-song EP. We recorded that back in April or late April, early May of last year. And it finally came out. Really impressed with the mixing and mastering, job that was done on it. Everything you can hear the instruments, all separate from one another, but obviously, together.
Okay, so you're the perfect guy to ask, and Kevin as well. Why is it that every band that's ever existed, except maybe the Whispers, they've turned on each other at some point?
From 1980 until the dying days of the Ramones, Johnny and Joey hated each other, like vehemently hated each other.
Most bands. Every episode of Unsung's the same story, except the Whispers.
I mean, Johnny stole Joey's
girlfriend and married her.
Yeah, that'll do it.
So there are stories where the other Ramones, where Johnny and Joey would talk to each other through the other guys. So Dee Dee would go and say, John says this, and then he would go to Johnny and say, Joey says this. And that's how they would work together for 1980 to.
So if the five of us formed some kind of band and went on the road, after 30 days, would we be like murdering each other, or would we still be talking?
Well, if we stole each other's wives, then
Yeah.
We do non-musical things, that.
No,
hurt
that's
people,
the thing. That's so tough, being with the same group of people on the road for months and months and months. It's just
I've been with girlfriends on vacation. It didn't work either. 24/7's tough.
Right,
Right.
but you may
24/7. You have to create with them. You have to deal with the money with them.
You have to
deal
agree
with the
on
tra-
diners.
But you brought up a great point here about touring in particular. Touring is a bear. It's a beast.
Oh, it is.
And you are, especially if you're a band starting out, and it could be fun and everything, but once you become a little more established and a little Derek, and if the money does come in and
Right.
but you're constantly with these people every day for a certain period of time, it's going to drive you nuts.
Yeah.
It's true with
It's
any
gonna-
Familiarity
any-
breeds contempt.
any kind of work.
Yeah.
If you see the
And
change.
Antonio's a good guy, but if I had dinner with him 42 days in a row, maybe we get tired of each other. I don't know.
Right, that's another.
Maybe.
That's another thing. They just released a movie about Agnostic Front, who I had mentioned, and it's basically the lead singer Roger, who has now moved out to Arizona, has 2 kids. You know, he has a wife. You know, he is a big antique car collector. That's his big hobby. And then the guitar player Vinny, who's a Brooklyn guy, the accent, the whole 9
Yeah.
yards, lives and breathes this music 24 hours.
Yeah.
And he's 62 years old now.
Wow.
And Roger's in his late 50s, 55, I want to say. But there's one guy with the family who's the face of the band. Then there's the next guy who's in his early 60s who, when you speak to him, he's like a 18-year-old kid, and he's still into
music's
this
his
music.
life. Yeah.
Right.
And so basically the whole documentary is how do these two, the family man and the 60-year-old teenager, make it work on the road for.
Well, it's always about balance with
Balance,
anything.
yeah.
With
Balance.
anything.
Yeah, there are groups like the Smithereens who were together for years and years and years and were able to make it work. Pat D'Annunzio,
God rest his soul. Yes.
Groups like They Might Be Giants, who they managed to figure out how to work things out, but if it's just the 2 guys and they can kind of rotate their outside musicians, it's a little bit of a different situation. If you're talking about a group of 4 or 5 or 6 individuals, but usually the fights are usually going to be
The two main guys.
The 2 main guys.
I mean, this current lineup that they have is now from, I don't want to say 2004-ish. So this current lineup has been together, 15 years.
I guess the Allmans were together for over 40 years.
But also
With maybe three of the guys throughout,
Right.
with a lot of infighting and a lot of interchanges, but I mean,
And passages too.
right. Well, of course, the tragedy of Dwayne, that's
and even look at
irreplaceable. But
like a band
they
like
survived. I
right.
mean,
Right.
sorry.
No, I was saying even look at someone like Motorhead who just died.
Yes.
And that was the same lineup forever, like from the 90s.
The Stones.
Look,
The Stones, right?
Yeah.
well, Keith Richards keeps getting younger every year.
I don't
When
know how he does it.
after World War III and the nuclear holocaust, it's going to be cockroaches and Keith Richards. But that's
Well,
basically going to be it.
I also want to bring up a group that was together for so many years, and they practically was till death do they part, and that was the Four Tops.
Oh yeah.
Tops,
The
yeah.
Four Tops had that original lineup of Levi, Obie, Lawrence, and Duke from 1954.
And one by one they go.
Right,
Yeah.
95 when Lawrence was the first to go.
Yeah.
He was the first to pass on. But they've asked them for years. What kept them together? And one said, well, each person takes turn being the leader of the group. So that way
It wasn't about ego.
it wasn't about
Yeah,
ego.
yeah.
But I think also another thing is that they would record, they would go on tour, they did their television thing, whether it was Dick Clark, whether it was Midnight Special, and then when they're done, they each went their separate ways to do their own thing.
I think that's
Right.
how you have
Healthy.
to do it.
Yeah.
We're rapidly running out of time, so one last quick question for the panel, and then John's going to do a short poetry set. If there were one artist I would go see tonight, out of the thousands of living artists, I'd go see Bobby Rush. I love Bobby Rush with all my heart, Who would you see out of all the living artists if you could pay for one concert ticket or get comp for one concert, whatever the case may be?
Well, definitely Tower of Power, and I'm not
Really?
saying it, and I'm not saying it because of
They're great. I
see,
get
but
see.
it's just they are constantly great.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
I've never been disappointed.
yeah, and they've had a couple of lead singers in the last few years that are just smoking.
There you go. John, one act.
Elton.
Antonio?
I'm gonna go with Paul McCartney.
Paul McCartney. Okay.
Yeah, he just strikes me as, in my estimation, the best that we have right now, and he's still going strong. His new project, Egypt Station, is amazing. It's always fascinated me the way that he approaches instrument play. I mean, being able to play his instruments backwards, and his approach to playing piano, always seeming like it's the first time he's playing it, has always been very intriguing to me and inspiring.
There you go, Mike.
And I'll continue on my punk rock hardcore theme. Bad Religion, easily to me, that is the band that they're on their 39th year now. Next year they'll do their 40th anniversary.
Wow.
That's a long
Another
run.
band with a million different lineup changes, but still the same founders have been in the band throughout. But I think that's the one punk rock band that, to me, first of all, I think the greatest of all time. But I think that's one of the bands that you can say, that you don't listen to that on a regular basis. What band should I listen to? That is
Bad Religion. Wow.
very, the lyrics are just so genius and thought provoking. It's not just one of those bands that's get your energy out. It's listen. It's really listen to what they're saying type of thing.
Okay.
About religion, about the way the world works. The lead singer is actually a professor at UCLA, so written 2-3 books. Brilliant guy.
More importantly, who's going to win the WWE Royal Rumble tonight? He's a wrestling fan like me.
Here's another question. I'll answer your question with a question. With me being out of the loop, basically, who's in it?
Beats me. I barely watch WWE either. But speaking of wrestling, our sponsor, SWF Wrestling, returns to Toto in New Jersey, The Great Awakening, on February 9th. Okay, so that's SWF Wrestling. Check out my articles at ProWrestlingStories.com. And next week, we're going to have a ton of indie wrestlers here. Come back, Mike. Bunch of indie wrestlers. And we're going to be giving away tickets to ICW's February 15th show at Ultimate Fitness in Queens. Ticket giveaways for our wrestling fans. And meet yours truly, along with Greg the Hammer Valentine and Coco Beware at WrestleCon, April 5th and 6th, New York City, Hilton. And 350 Days, produced by Darren Antola. And Fulvio Cesare will be out worldwide in the spring, and we'll be going into details on that, starring superstar Billy Graham and Bret Hart. So without further ado, we're going to take a quick break, and John Winnell is going to do a poetry set for us to wrap up the show.
Not to shake it off, another night to make it all. It's so exciting, a hot kiss could start a fire. Baby, this can make you high, and how a mess when it's inside. It's so inviting, over and over. I want you again. I want to be closer tonight.
right, so we just want to thank once again our distinguished panel and my very special co-host, Kevin Goins, who knows more about music than any human being in the world, except for maybe Carlton J. Smith and Lawrence Worrell.
Yeah, we got to get them on the show.
Oh, my. They've done the show.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah.
We got to get the three of us together.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
What these guys know about music, it's like you hear the deal like there's 26 billionaires and they own as much as the rest of the world. These three guys know more than like a million music fans.
And I want to speak real quick about Carlton because he has he's working on a new album, and he has a couple singles out on a label called Timian Records, which is available through the Daptone Records website. And we're talking like classic soul in the vein of the Al Greens and the High Records.
Oh yeah, John Winnell and I were at his last gig down at Drum,
Yep.
down in the Village. He's the real deal, Carlton. I love Carlton.
Absolutely.
And thank you once again to Mike and Antonio. And without further ado, we're going to wrap up the show with a poetry set. John, plug your book real quick before you read.
Okay, it's called Poems for Everyday People. There's not many copies left, very few. So if you like it, I don't know if I'm going to read anything from that today, but you can reach me, JONWINELL, at Yahoo or at Facebook. And there's not many left because the publisher folded, so whatever's around is around.
There you go. So it's a valued collectible. There you go.
I'm revising many of those. So I just have a few, and just want to say that today is International Holocaust Remembrance Day. So I'm going to end or close to
and
the
a third
end
of Americans don't believe it happened. Speaking of stupidity.
It's a European.
Yeah.
Well, I'll read something in the end.
I went to Bookenville. That's like crazy that people think that.
Well, good for you. I'm glad that you did. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, that's a hours and hours and hours.
Never underestimate the stupidity of the American public.
Right.
There are people who are alive today that literally went through it.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course. 40 of my family members died there, so I could attest that it happened.
I'll just read a short set. This is a new one. It's called Skaters in Bryant Park. Amid the chaos of a crystal city, huddling beneath a crescent moon, laughter and frozen water etch paths for lovers and families. Time seems suspended, hidden behind ivied walls, lining palaces where naked text and commerce define Deco-era fantasies. Lost in shadow, I listen to the crunching ice, metal blades dash as playful warriors, fearless as lions, make plans whilst memories flood as rivers. Snow falls, covering streets that once kept us laughing, skating across frozen ponds as turkey vultures wait amongst the fir trees for anything that had fallen to satisfy their desperate hunger. And this is a contemporary piece also. It's called The Kingdom Has Fallen. The tarnished scepter, once regal and glittering majestic, lies on broken tiles inside a burning palace. The empty throne bleeds urgency as masses seeking comfort caterwaul and rush through streets. Pandemonium snakes as a wise cobra through forests and homes. Voices echo off stone and concrete. The blister of solitude oozes pus and blood. Eyes burn as teeth sweat. The smell of desperate bodies grasping anything permeates as a cracked shell of doom that has birthed demons and nightmares. Light has begun to dim on the horizon. A child follows a shadow, something tangible to hold. And this is about St. Francis, about a painting in the Frick from the 15th century. It's called An Inauspicious Happening, St. Francis in the Wilderness. Inside the majestic Frick collection, on a wooden paneled wall, a simply clad monk waits. At the edge of a field beside a blue stone grotto, tender animals seek his kindness in an otherwise transient universe. A skull and Bible, frail reminders of the inevitability of time. A distant castle burnishes the sunlight as a shepherd returns his flock, and a curious hare emerges through a familiar opening where a burrow patiently warms its flanks. The gentle Francis espies a twitch in the clouds, stands with arms and hands outstretched. On this otherwise ordinary afternoon, an angel descends for a fleeting moment to offer him grace. I'm going to read two more. This is in honor of the day, and it's called "The Snow Falls Upon the City." A sudden chill whispers through trees. Fog and moisture dampens each breath. Clouds slowly begin to shed snow upon the city. Joy in an infant's darkened eyes, softly protected inside her father's overcoat. Pale images that enlighten gray streets. Voices resound in joy and fear, fascination and horror, as couples careen and dance, and autos bleat alarm. Within the warmth of a velvet-trimmed theater, discussions of unforgotten terrors flicker. What war brought out in folks: desperation, murder, suicide, choices that resound an ethical dilemma: who shall live and who shall perish? A merciful nurse offers morphine to soothe a baby's suffering, lingering in forced starvation, ordered by the death-hungry Dr. Mengele. Helpless as an autumn leaf, her mother still screams into the midnight air. Somehow the lights return, and the shaking has subsided. The snow continues to baffle and snarl. Suddenly, all these daily inconveniences appear ridiculous. And to end, I'm going to read a poem called Endings, appropriately enough. And thanks to everybody, Evan and Village Connection and panel. Endings. The trill of a solo violin, sadly intoxicating, laments ageless time. Outside the window, rain streaks as tears allowing tenderness. I peer through painted leaves, separation from the barren harshness of waterlogged gardens where butterflies and sparrows rest in the warmth of summer. What will become of germinating dreams? Will they wither in frozen winter or flutter like wakened memories? Thanks.
John Winnell, everybody. Jim, anything you want to plug for the station?
No, sir.
Any new shows?
Glad to have you guys back.
Thank you.
And we will be picking up a few new shows starting in February. We'll announce them then.
There you
Top
go.
secret.
And I have one or two new sponsors coming on board, so I'll announce that
That's
as well.
pleasure.
And our disclaimer, the comments, opinions of others not necessarily shared or endorsed by yours truly or Village Connection. And without further ado, we're going to wrap things up. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thank you, Evan.
And you're always welcome. You know more about music than any human being in the entire galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy right here. Oh, my God.
I know what I know, and what I don't know, I get to learn.
I know what I'm passionate about, but I don't have. When you guys were talking punk, I really don't know. I really don't know. So you guys are amaze me really. It's I like what I like,
Right.
But anyway, guys, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Anything you want to plug real quick, Mike?
It's in its very beginning stages, but I am starting a new band.
Okay.
I've so far found 2 individuals who have the same focus as me. So we're gonna start getting the groundwork going, and hopefully by the summertime we'll be ready to go.
The groundwork will be go out to the same diner every night for 60 straight nights, and if you don't murder each other, think about it. Yeah.
Well, one of the people lives in Queens, so we won't be spending all that, every day together.
Okay.
There you go.
Anyway, that'll about do it, folks. Thanks so much. Thank you.
That all dead, the lines cut off inside my head. I left here like a broken man, with no idea of where I stand. Oh, my mind clears. Lord, I shed all of my tears. Oh, now baby, I was just waiting here while you moved on. Security, this newfound freedom you kept from me. The sound of all your loaded guns, this outbreak war has just begun. The sound of all your loaded guns, this broken man has already won. Oh, my mind clears. Lord, I shed